Alright everyone, time to talk about Trump's 2020 chances and why these people being all sorts of hyperbolic about how he's crashing and burning, he can't win, Biden's 14 points ahead. You're not living in reality land, you're living in bullshit land. Again, polling aggregates can be useful. Single polls, rarely so. A single poll can only really be useful if it comports to the aggregate anyway. Otherwise, it's just as likely to be an outlier in one direction as the other. It's more likely to be off-center than it is in the center, because there are two different poles it can lean towards. Keep that in mind. Polls, therefore, are wildly inaccurate unless you bundle a lot of them together. When I look at Trump's approval, it's been unchanged for a week. It's still hovering around 43. Well, 43 seemed high before last October when Trump was at his lows in the mid-30s for approval. 42, 43 would have been a great day for him. The fact is that people are matching him up against Biden in an election that contains the following little gems of wisdom that people desperately need to keep in mind. Number one, we've got all sorts of statistical anomalies in polling, especially the matchup polling. At this point, I'm not even sure that any of these polling firms are useful, even when you aggregate them. Because you'll have one that shows Trump wildly ahead in every battleground and another one that shows Biden up by double digits. They can't both be true, and I'm thinking neither are. I'm thinking it's somewhere in the middle, with Biden leading Trump, certainly, outside of statistical anomalies. That is true. But then you've got several other things you need to worry about. The first thing is differential turnout. Trump has massive popularity in party. That is that the majority of the country disapproves of him, but among those that approve of him, they wildly approve. Biden doesn't have that advantage. Biden has a larger core of support, technically speaking, that supports him far less. There is no real enthusiasm there. Joe Biden is also demented, and this drags on his approval. When he makes an appearance, it actually harms him. Essentially, he should disappear from the campaign trail and just do what Trump does and tweet. People right now are up in arms. Did you see that with the differential reporting on the protests against police brutality epidemic that doesn't exist versus Trump's Tulsa rally that he's planning, where like 1 million people signed up to get tickets because there hasn't been a Trump rally in months? And it's going to be, trust me, it's going to be massive. It's going to be insane. They'll be lucky if they can actually do proper crowd control. Did you see how they're criticizing that and saying, well, that's going to cause COVID cases? But all those same groups of people are in wild support of people protesting in large groups against mob brutality. But don't go to a Trump rally. You see, as long as you're throwing bricks, you become immune to COVID, according to these people. It's very interesting how medicine works these days. I'm thinking it might be some Newspeak 1984 propaganda. I'm thinking it might not be reality, but that's just me. But Trump has much higher enthusiasm. Again, in-party support is sky high. Biden's in-party support is mediocre. It's not terrible. He's not Walter Mondale or something. He's not, you know, maybe Al Gore. But he's not even as high up as Clinton. The gap is wider. There's a 5-point increase in the enthusiasm gap over the 2016 election against Biden. Now, Hillary Clinton was riding about 2.5 points ahead of Trump in federal polling, but ended up a bit behind him. In most of these states, there was a 2-3 point swing. Part of that is simple polling anomaly, but most of it was enthusiasm. If the enthusiasm gap really has grown that much, you can add 3 points to where Trump is at and find the number of votes he'll get. That's enough for all of the closer states to swing red. People pretending that Biden is going to pick off Arizona are kidding themselves. One major problem is that you haven't had debates yet. Another problem, getting past enthusiasm polling, debates and so forth, the other thing is that things tend to narrow closer to the election. When things really get down to it, it's quite an anomaly when it doesn't begin to narrow at the end. Occasionally it swings in the other direction, Carter versus Reagan, a few of these other cases where it widens at the end. But for the most part, it gets closer because we haven't really had cases in recent history where you have wildly different candidates in terms of their capabilities of campaigning. The closest thing you have is like Obama-McCain, of course. And McCain was obviously going to lose. There were people at the end who was like, oh, Mr. McCain's going to win. He's going to grab all these seats. And it's like, God, you must be so dumb to believe that. Again, you're asking for a 6 or 7 point swing in some of these states in order for McCain to take them. It's just not going to happen. Biden is consistently polling ahead of Trump in many of these battleground states, though. That is one thing we need to acknowledge. Of course, I think that the answer to this is partially the economy is in a lull. Partially, it's pandemic-related, and partially due to the fact that there's nonstop propaganda about how Trump mysteriously controls the Minneapolis police force. People are beginning to get pissed off, though, more, I think, at the left for applauding rioters. At this point, they're beginning to swing in the other direction. The economy is beginning to recover. You are having, it appears, a V-shaped recovery to some extent. If that continues through November, much of the unemployment that we've gained will be taken care of. The unemployment rate will be back down, hopefully, in the single digits. And by the way, people who are liberal are hoping against this. They're hoping the economy stays fractured so that Trump loses. They're like Bill Maher. He's like, oh, the only way that we're going to win this is if the economy collapses. Well, the economy is quickly recovering, Bill. So, be careful applauding yourself too quickly. It's funny because even now, with Trump supposedly polling double digits behind, according to CNN, which is bullshit, and if you look at the aggregate, it's a lot closer, even then, the majority of the population expects Trump to be reelected. Part of that is because most people are intelligent enough to realize that on a debate stage, Biden's going to crash and burn. And that's really the ace up the sleeve of the Trump campaign. He's going to drag Biden out there and he's going to beat him like a rag doll. That's what's going to happen. I don't think that there's any hope for Biden at a debate. I think his campaign is going to argue very strenuously against having debates. We shouldn't be having debate or digital only. And I've said this consistently for months. This is my prediction. They're going to push for digital only debates based on the pandemic. We don't want to have a real debate. And Trump can counter by saying, well, it'll just be me, Biden, and a moderator. Put us all behind plexiglass screens if you're so fucking paranoid. And that'll be funny because then he can cast the Biden people off as paranoid fearmongers because there's no real second wave of the disease to deal with. It's excellent. Excellent coffee too, by the way. I brew it strong. But yeah, Trump's doing just fine. It's really funny when you see the black pilling, like the shills, posting online, oh, Biden's 12 points ahead. At this point, they're using a poll that's almost a month outdated, by the way. That is one poll. It was conducted by a group that is not notorious for having good polling standards. Now, Rasmussen shows Trump behind too. Yeah, congratulate yourselves. Biden is ahead. The problem is the enthusiasm gap is so sheer that it almost doesn't matter if he is. He could probably be leading, I would estimate, by 4 points on election day at the federal level and still lose. Biden, that is. And there's no guarantee he's even in the lead at all in the polling aggregate. It could be that at the debates, Trump destroys him so handily that he begins to rise up and becomes the inevitable candidate that wins. Also, we don't have a running mate for Biden yet. We don't know who he's going to put up against Mike Pence. Smart money says Kamala Harris, but it could be someone who's not even publicly being considered. It could be someone who didn't run. Like the idea of Stacey Abrams, that would be a good one. I hope he does choose someone like really zonked out. I almost hope it is Kamala because Kamala's a terrible debater and says weird shit. And she's a lot like Biden. She can't go out in public without making mistakes or being antagonistic. Biden is very happy that he doesn't have to be physically on the campaign trail doing rallies right now because every time he goes to talk to some union workers, he gets into an old man fight and challenges people to a push-up contest. Yeah, he's a really, really strong candidate. Inevitable winner. If Trump does manage to lose to Biden, it'll almost be funnier because I think he got beaten by a dude who can't campaign his way out of a tin can. I guess that would definitely shatter any illusion of Trump's strength. I just don't think it's likely. I still give Trump a 90% chance, the same as I have been giving him. And the fact is that he's in a temporary lull in his approval right now because of a compacting of various negative issues. He tends to rise up stubbornly after these things happen. Every single time people say Trump is over party, hashtag Biden 2020, all of a sudden Trump gains 2-3 points in aggregated polling. I have no reason to believe that won't happen this time as well, and then much more at the debates. That's about all. Peace out.